and then click that one. Great. Does that work? Can everybody see? Uh,
Not yet. Oh, it's come. Yep,
how's
there it
that?
is. Yes,
Good. Okay.
wonderful. Thank you.
Move you over here so I can know where to look roughly. I always get slightly discombobulated. Despite years of practice of this, it never feels normal, does it? Um, right. If you can see what I need you to see and you can hear me, then I think we're ready to go. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me to be here today and for that lovely introduction, which I couldn't have written better myself. I'm going to speak for the next 30 or 40 minutes about an essential but all too frequently overlooked aspect of ancient Greek culture, and that is its music. So I'm going to kick off by addressing some essential questions. Oh, no, let's see what happens if I. There we go. So the obvious questions are why, when the ancient world offers such a rich array of language, literature, philosophy, history, art, architecture, all of which we can access through wonderful texts and material evidence, why are we wasting an hour of a Saturday afternoon discussing music that we cannot hear, and if we could, we might not like? Has anybody, I don't know if you're able to show hands, if anybody here has been to a concert of ancient music in recent history or at all? A few shaking their heads. I mean, I do advise it, but I also to go to a recital of ancient music is, let's say it's an hour in length. You'll experience about 45 minutes of watching someone try to tune an instrument, and then hear about 37 seconds of music. Because of course all we have is little fragments of stuff. It can be a frustrating experience. Nevertheless, the second question that we will address is of course, what is there to study? The body of documentary and material evidence for the performance of ancient Greek music is very small, that is true. Most of it is fragmentary, and it's open to a wide range of interpretations. But it is worth spending, I think, a few minutes examining what we do have, what it has to tell us about music in ancient Greek life, before we go on to look in slightly more detail at the subject, which is my major preoccupation, and that is, I'm going to go back actually, music in ancient Greek drama. If I have one message for you today, it is this. I think the ancient experience of theatre was shaped by and steeped in music. And I think it's become all too easy to read ancient tragedy and comedy without the music that was such an important part of it. That absence of music has to some extent distorted our understanding of the work of the Athenian dramatists, who really were also songwriters and composers and choreographers. They were busy people. So today I'm going to take a little look at some examples from ancient drama later on and see what happens when we put that music back in and what does it tell us. But I'm going to start with the bigger picture. Next slide, please. I don't miss COVID. Does anybody else? No. Music was central to Greek life. In fact, I go as far as to say that much like today, music was absolutely everywhere, whether you liked it or not. Not just as an entertainment, we know music was considered vital in educating good citizens. Music had therapeutic applications. It made you better, healthier, as well as wiser. It featured in worship of the gods, of course. We have hymns. It had a social function too. Making music was important at festivals, where it was a very effective tool in defining communal identity. When people danced together and sang together, they identified with each other. The history and mythology of ancient Greek people is recorded and promulgated in the bardic traditions. You know this, of course. Victors at ancient games were celebrated not just with a prize, but with a song. And Greeks didn't just make music, they wrote it down, they studied it, they codified it. And more than that, they applied what they understood about harmony and acoustics and music to shape the spaces they inhabited. And in the case of Pythagoras, they borrowed the language of music to describe the wider universe as they perceived it. Music then was present in the lives of people in ancient Greece and played a part in their moral, their physical, their intellectual, and their spiritual endeavors. Of course, prevalence doesn't always correlate to value or impact. Anybody who has ever found themselves distracted by music in an elevator will know that when it comes to music, quality and quantity are not the same thing. We know that music was everywhere. Was it in fact worth listening to? Did it hold meaning for the people whose lives it underscored? Or was it like music in the elevator, simply there in the background, whether they liked it or not? that is, of course, too big a question for me to answer today, but I think we can get some sense of the power and importance of music in ancient Greek life from these couple of reflections on music. So this first one from Elian is a story, an anecdote about Solon, the great lawgiver. So Solon, the son of Exechastides, when his nephew sang him a song of Sappho's, took such pleasure in it, he asked the young man to teach it to him. When questioned why he wanted to learn it, his answer was, so that once I've learned it, I may die. This quote, which we should acknowledge comes from a Roman historian come gossip columnist, Elian, writing in around the 2nd century CE, is intriguing, not simply because it tells us how impactful music can be, so beautiful in the case of a Song of Sappho that once you've learned it, your entire life's work is accomplished. The man in this anecdote who makes this pronouncement is the great Athenian statesman Solon, captain moderation, sage, stable, sensible, dare I say boring, yet moved by the power of music to hyperbole. Now, I don't think it hurts this argument that similar stories appear elsewhere, particularly in Ammianus Marcellinus, and for him it's the music of Stesichorus that has the same effect on Socrates. But the fact that this anecdote is prevalent in the literature about music is interesting, and the point is the same. In ancient Greece, music is worth making because it has power. It can change your mind. In fact, music might be said to have too much power. Now, Plato loved to complain about music, especially the genre we know as new music, which emerges at the end of the 5th century. And in the Republic, he suggests this. So the form of music has never changed except or without at the same time changing the laws of the state, the political laws. So Plato reveals himself to be more than just a sort of conservative hater of innovation, and I think he was that sometimes. Music isn't just powerful, it is an actual threat to order as far as he's concerned. It should be treated with extreme care. I have to say, as a musician, someone who pays his mortgage making music, I find that very affirming. As a scholar, I find it also quite enticing. I mean, who wouldn't want to hear more about the music that made Solon swoon and that made Plato actually tremble with fear? So let's turn to the evidence for what that music could have sounded like. We have 3 key resources available to us for the reconstruction of ancient music. There are some instruments. We have some archaeological evidence of instruments, bits and pieces of alloy. I recommend, if you're interested in sort of jigsaw puzzles of bits of pipes, then you look up Stefan Hagel's amazing recent work of sort of trying to piece together bits and pieces of 148 different bits of pipes. It's completely impenetrable, but really impressive. We also have loads of images of musicians in action, of course, across the Hellenosphere. We have documentary evidence too, which is to say written music in terms of papyrus fragments or songs scribbled in other places. We'll come to those, of course. And don't forget, we have the text of all the extant dramatic corpus, which includes hundreds and hundreds of songs whose melodies are missing, but whose rhythms we can still study and perform today. And I'm just going to say, for the record now, I am interested in meter chiefly. I'm going to talk about meter, so if you don't like that, I would think about going and getting a cup of tea in about 20 minutes time. So thirdly, we have secondhand reports and discussions of music, including sort of some quite dense theoretical treatises that explain the relationships of scales and modes and that sort of thing. And they tell us something about how music was played. I'm going to focus now on the first 2 of these things for our sanity's sake, and also just to give us an idea of the sort of sounds that make up the Greek musical palette. So instruments first. When it comes to instruments, there are 4 core categories, I think, that it's worth bearing in mind when you're recreating the ancient Greek sound world. First up, we have the wind instruments. So these include all sorts of pipes. The aulos, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, is actually 2 instruments. It's 2 similar length pipes with a double reed, much like you might find on an oboe or bassoon, and you play them both at the same time. This is not for me. More than one thing in my mouth at the same time is for other people to do. It's an impressive and complicated instrument to play. As you can see from the picture on the left, it was allowed to play the aulos with clothes on, but apparently not on Greek pottery. They're nearly always naked, and I don't know why that is. Modern day aulos players, they're more conservative with their dress. There are lots of variants of the aulos. So the mon-aulos, the single pipe, is much less common. And actually, there's often a pipe without a reed that you can. It's called the mon-aulos too. A plagi-aulos we see references to, which is more like a modern day flute. It means sideways flute, sideways pipe. An askaulos, bag, so a bagpipe, very much like a sort of modern day bagpipe. And a pan flute, like the sort of pan pipes that we see in lots of cultures. They're relatively present. A hydraulis is a water organ, the forerunner really of the modern day organ, which is just lots of bigger auloses, all driven by pressure, which is created by pushing water in various directions. And the other one we want to mention there is the salpinx, which was a battlefield instrument, and more like a modern day trumpet. Obviously wouldn't be valved, more like a bugle. So that's the sort of range of wind instruments that existed. There's a string family of instruments really in ancient music too. So lots of these names you might have come across before. Barbiton is the one pictured bottom left there, which is a sort of big loopy one. A kelis is a smaller version. A kitara, we hear the word kitara, that's the root of our word guitar, is sort of a concert lyre, like the one on the right. It has a big body, which means it's resonant and it makes a big old noise. So you could play that at the opening of a games or for a big dithyrambic sort of performance. There's other words, pandura, a narrower guitar, a forminx, a crescent-shaped lute. That one in the middle with the friendly face is a forminx, so not very many strings, but looks pretty happy. A sambuca, which is a tall Eastern sort of lyre and also a refreshing drink. And then there's various harps, like a psaltery, an epigonion, a psalterion, a kanonaki is a sort of Eastern zither, and a trigonon, which is conveniently a triangular lute. So lots of attested sort of stringed instruments, all quite self-explanatory, mostly designed for indoor use, it is fair to say. So this is music that happens indoors. The aulos is more versatile. It's very loud. It can be very loud, at least. So it's your instrument of choice when accompanying the theatre. Third family of instruments that we find sort of attested in ancient Greek culture, of course, percussion instruments. There's some common names for them, crotalum, cymbalum, and so on and so on. In the current scholarship, there's a lot less emphasis on percussion instruments. People are very keen to make auloses, to try and make performances with auloses. People love trying to sell you a forminx or a barbiton on Amazon that they've reconstructed out of absolutely authentic materials. And you will never ever get in tune. But there is much less emphasis on percussion instruments, possibly because modern musicologists like to project their own prejudices onto ancient music, and they just tend to hold these percussion instruments in less esteem. They take less skill, apparently, to play. I suggest that given the diverse array of rhythmical content that we do encounter in Greek music, that these percussion instruments and their players might prove to be more important and prevalent than many have previously thought. And not to dwell for too long on this, but here's some examples in Euripides, in the Bacchae. So Dionysus exhorts his maenads to Orestes tapichoren pole prugon tupana, to take up those Phrygian drums, and then sort of 50 or so lines later on they come, and they describe the drums that they're carrying. The bursatonon kukloma. Kukloma isn't a word for drum; it just means circle, I guess. But a loud, a tight-skinned circle is definitely that, and a balibramon tumpanon, a deep booming drum. And these lines I think are interesting. They suggest that the chorus on the ancient stage, I mean, it'd be stupid if they sang their song describing themselves carrying these drums and weren't carrying drums. So I like this as a piece of evidence that this is a group of performers who are actually playing these things in an actual play, while they danced and sang, which is to say it's a very noisy scene. Its noisiest component isn't the drums, though. The noisiest component in ancient Greek music, especially on the ancient stage, is the voice, and there is a fantastic ancient Greek singer for you. So much of ancient music, at least what we have left, is vocal music. So solo monodies, choral odes, songs composed for intimate gatherings like the symposium, but also for performance in massive amphitheatres. The Greeks sang a lot. It's noteworthy that the instruments I've described in the last few slides all play within and around the limits of the human vocal range, which is to say those instruments are there to serve and support what I think is the key characteristic of Greek music, which is that it is sung. It is vocal music. The voice is the starting point. What did that music sound like? I hear you clamoring. Okay, maybe not. The most famous answer to that, I'm sure you know about this because you're interested people, comes on this piece of rock here. This marble column, possibly a funeral epitaph. Others think it might be a monument celebrating musical achievements of a man named Seikilos, possibly not at his death. You can visit it today in Copenhagen, I believe, in the National Museum of Denmark. But it was originally installed in the 1st century BCE in the Greek colony of Thales, which is a site now occupied by the city of Aydin in modern Turkey. There's an inscription on this piece of stone, which is often referred to as the oldest surviving complete piece of music. I mean, that is a very disputable claim, but let's go with it. And we're told that because what we can see here is not just words, but notes. And you can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but certainly in the lower central image there, above and between the words of the song, we can see little figures, which tell us some more information. In fact, they tell us the pitches, the notes for which this song is to be sung. It's a really short, happily and uplifting text, and you can see the lyric there, so I don't need to read it to you. But because they took the time to record those notes as well as the words, I can sing it to you. So I might well do that now. I have my own selection of string instruments here. This is not a lyre or indeed a kithara. It's a crap ukulele. It has a couple of things in common with ancient string instruments. One is that it has a sort of wooden body and a handful of strings. The other thing it has in common with them is it refuses to keep in tune. Anyway, so here's the song that's on the Seikilos Epitaph. Hosanzis feinu miden halos sulupu prosaligon estitorzin totalos sacranos sapeti. And that is it. But it's quite nice. I'm going to go through the whole thing again. I'll take out the pauses this time so you can hear it in one. Hosanzis finu meden halos sulupu prosaligon estitorzin totalos sacranos sapeti. There we go. So for the oldest song that survives, it's rather sweet. I'm quite fond of it. Here's the melody as I just sang it to you. And it appears to match what is a really consoling lyric. It's catchy. It's very easy on the ear. It's not too hard to sing. It'd be nicer if I had a better ukulele, but hey. It uses 8 notes of a modal scale. So ancient theorists would call that the Hypophrygian mode. I say that, actually, they can't agree. the thing about modes in music, and please, I'm sure someone's got a really horrible question about ancient modes. The answer is no one knows. No one can agree. You can read 3 textbooks on the modes of ancient music and you'll get 4 answers to the same question. So I can't help you. Anyway, this is supposedly the Hyperphrygian mode. Modern musicians like me would recognize that as a Mixolydian, which would say it sounds like a regular major scale with a flattened 7th. And that gives you the heavier sounding sigh on the word lupu, because you get that lovely flattened 7th on and that word from lupeo means cause you pain. I hope nothing annoys you. So it's a really appropriate match of words and music. The rhythm is really simple. It's based on iambics with quite a lot of variation to accommodate some irregular line lengths. And having the notes and the words here together draws attention to something we don't expect to see very often in Greek prosody, which is you have the use of 3 notes to 1 syllable twice. It happens here in the second bar. I don't know if you can see my cursor on this fainu or finu, however you're pronouncing that. I'll come to that in a second. And you can see it again on the last syllable, or the apeti there. So Greek meter obviously is predominantly formed from long and short syllables in a ratio of 2 to 1, or so we're told. And here we have 2 long notes that appear to be equivalent in length to 3 short ones. That might be a stylistic quirk peculiar to this time, this place, or this composer, or it might be something that we just can't see in the remaining musical corpus because we don't have enough evidence. But either way, it's really interesting to see it twice in this song. So you'll have noticed my unorthodox pronunciation of the Greek. That's because this is a 1st century text, and by this point the vowels are large and the diphthongs are shifting towards those that we recognize in modern Greek. We're in sort of Koine territory here. Performing in this way draws attention to another really nice feature of this song, which of course it rhymes. So fenu, lupu, zdin, apeti, they're all on long syllables at the end of lines. So they're followed by a breath. I gave it a little pause there to emphasize that. They interestingly come at the end of passages of descending melody, and they're all melismatic. So they're set to more than 1 note at a time, and that places greater emphasis on those rhyming syllables. It seems clear that rhyme is designed into this piece. It's being used to heighten the impact of the song and lodge its message of positivity firmly in the ears and brains of those who hear and indeed read it on a column. And it raises lots of questions, this piece, that I can't answer, but we can discuss them later and investigate them further, which is, why is this song written down? Who is the intended reader? I don't know the answers to any of these, but perhaps you do, and I'll come away wiser from this session. How widespread was the ability to read music? If you come across a column with a song notated on it, and it doesn't happen very often, how likely is it that they would bother to sculpt the notes as well as the words on it? For one thing, what is it about this particular composer, Seikilos, or this song, that it seemed appropriate to record both the notes and the words? For one thing, it's unusual, at least in a modern context, to see songs carved in stone with melody. As I said, the best song melodies become intimately entwined with their lyrics, so that only the words are really required to prompt the memory. That's at least how our memory operates these days with regard to song. The sound and the appreciation of the whole song comes from the words. And the same is largely true, I think, in the ancient world. The Seikilos Epitaph is one of just a handful of instances of ancient Greek notated music that have survived or been rediscovered. And scholars who write about this, if you read West and Pullman on this, they're very clear that ancient Greeks were pretty snooty about the idea of notating music. They didn't think it was necessary because so much was already contained within the text. We have roughly 61 documents, all bits and pieces, fragments, which were published in 2001 by West and Pullman, and that number is continuing to rise. That is the sum total of our evidence for music actually written down in this way, and it's a very small data set, and a lot of it consists of music which was not actually written down at the time it was composed, but a long time after. Here is a piece from that collection. So another example, one which helpfully leads us from considering broader evidence for ancient music to its application in the theatre. So among those 60 or so scraps, Only 3 contain any music from the Athenian dramatists, and I have to say that is really disappointing. The most famous and speculated upon of these is this one here, which contains what we think is Euripides' original music for a choral ode in Orestes. It's an exceptionally valuable document in scholarly terms because it allows us to attempt to perform the music of tragedy as it might actually have been performed on the ancient stage in 408 BC. In the minutes that remain of this presentation, I'm going to discuss various ways we can interpret some of the information on this fragment. So first, a reminder of what this piece represents. So I started out explaining the prevalence and the potency of music in ancient Greek life. Nowhere was that more true than in the theatre. The evidence to back that up is in the plays themselves, in their form and in their content. The structure of every Greek tragedy or comedy is essentially, and this is very distilled, but it goes as follows. It goes scene, song, scene, song, scene, song, and then we go to the pub, which is to say it matches exactly the form of a Golden Age Broadway musical. Now this is obvious and commonly understood. I know that when I was an undergraduate reading tragedy, and I use the word advisedly, I was inclined to focus on the scenes, the dialogues, the interactions between protagonists, because the Greek is harder in the choruses, but also as a reader, when you come to the choral odes, the action seems to stop. So it's dangerously tempting to skip over the choral odes, over the songs, and then start again at the next scene and see how the plot has advanced. I know if anybody in the room is reading tragedy for the first time or is teaching tragedy to people who are reading it for the first time, it's, this is a common problem. When you see tragedy in performance, of course, which I hope you all have, you realize that it's the chorus who dominate in terms of interest, in terms of stage time. The set pieces, their songs and dances are the moments in which the moments of the plays which require the most resource in terms of you spend all your time rehearsing a Greek play, you spend 5 minutes on the scenes and you spend 5 months trying to make the chorus move at the same time as each other. It just takes more money. It takes more time. It takes more energy. It's clearly where the energy has gone into creating these pieces. And it's those set pieces that can create the lasting impression. This is borne out when we examine the content of tragedies, especially. And by examine, I mean just count stuff. We know from the meter of lines in plays whether they would originally have been said or have been sung. So all largely speaking, trimeter we expect to be spoken. Other lines in other meters we expect to be sung. The lowest proportion of sung content in the extant corpus is 25%, which is to say that the smallest amount of singing in any one of the extant tragedies is a quarter. But typically, especially in later plays, it's closer to 40%. And we bear in mind that sung lines take longer to deliver than said lines. They occupy the stage simply for longer because song is heightened and it takes more breath. Then that 40% of written lines correlates to, I would argue, definitely more than 50% of stage time in tragedy. If we spend 2 hours in the theatre watching a show by Euripides, for instance, then it's reasonable to expect that at least half of that time we would have been watching songs and dances. It's a musical theatre experience. Greek theatre is, whether we like it or not, by design, it's musical theatre. So to go back to, and obviously, I mean, the correlation between Sophocles and Stephen Sondheim, as I suggest at the bottom of the screen there, is flippant but pertinent. They occupied very similar roles. They're writing book music and lyrics. To return to the Orestes fragment then, this is a tiny, tiny chunk of what was a much larger musical piece. So I think it's important to see it and to frame it not as this is a little scrap of a song, this is a scrap of a score, which is a large piece of music that occupied a couple of hours of people's lives when it was performed. The action of the play, as I'm sure you know, concerns the fallout from the deaths of Clytemnestra, the wife of Agamemnon, and her lover Aegisthus. At this point, so about 300 lines in, the chorus, who are young women of Argos, but portrayed on the ancient stage, of course, by adult male Athenian citizens, are expressing their dismay and sympathy for Orestes. They lament because Orestes has been driven to the point of madness, resulting in matricide, and they reflect that for humans, prosperity is only ever fleeting. It's a really uplifting song, this one. As I mentioned before, This piece is particularly special because it retains the pitch notation alongside the lyrics for a choral ode, and you can see those again, as with the Seikilos Epitaph, above the lines. So you can just sort of pick out some of the words in here, and above them, these single characters, they correlate to notes, which does make it technically possible, if not easy, to perform it. And of course, people have been attempting to do so in all sorts of ways and with varied results. So we can have a listen to this. Now, I'm hoping, Irene, that when I press play, you're just going to be able to hear the music. If you can't, we'll do some technical jiggery-pokery and then move on. So this first version I'm going to play is from 1967, and it was reconstructed by the Greek composer Antonis Labdas. I think it's really atmospheric. Please work. Just let me know if you can hear anything. I can't hear anything. Can you hear now?
Now I hear, yeah.
Great. Okay, so is that, I hear you ask, the sound of authentic ancient dramatic music? Will you know by now, because you've been paying assiduous attention, that this performance you just heard, which is really lovely, but it differs from what might have been the original performance of that song in several key respects. So the instruments we heard there, that would be a pair of beautiful female voices and one guitar. We know on an ancient stage, of course, this would be sung by a large number, 15 roughly, male voices, and accompanied not on not any sort of lute or kithara, but on an aulos. That means the whole thing would have sounded lower and louder. The words, and specifically the vowels, of course, which are the point at which the voice resonates, would have been pronounced differently too. That's not a criticism of a modern Greek delivery, but it is just worth noting that the ancient pronunciation of the Greek would affect the tonality of that musical line, that melodic line. Another key difference would be the tempo. Of course, scraps of ancient music don't come with convenient performance directions. Euripides wasn't in the habit of marking 75 beats per minute on the page. That's a very modern concept, that we should be so controlling of our performances. But we can gauge some sense, I would suggest, of tempo from the piece's rhythmic content. So here's your meter klaxon. I'm going to talk about rhythm for the next 5 minutes or so, so strap in. Lots of students, and indeed illustrious scholars, start to look for the nearest exit when I do this. So if you're still here at the end, I'll take it as a compliment. Because I think this is the most interesting and exciting aspect of this particular song. So I'm going to break it down into, let's call it tasty biscuit-sized chunks. The song is written in Dokmiaks. Yay, Dokmiaks. Dokmiaks, Dodds, in his essential Bacchae commentary called the Dokmiaks, the meter of maximum excitement. There you go. Don't run away. Meter's exciting. A.M. Dale, another great meter scholar, tells us that the presence of Dokmiaks could signify any of the following: grief, fear, despair, horror, excitement, triumph, or indeed joy. That does sound a bit of a hedge to me. It's covering a lot of bases. But notwithstanding how broad that definition is, it is fair to assume that when a song is written in that rhythm, and here we have no less than 13 Dokmiaks in a row, we might expect that something exciting is happening. And so it is. So here is how we like to analyze that. I don't know how much experience the people in the room have of metrical scansion. Lots, I hope. In a nutshell, the Greek verse is on the left, of course, and its rhythm is notated on the right. So the U symbol denotes a short syllable, and a dash denotes a long one. Long ones we take to be twice the duration of a short one. If you've studied meter a bit, which I hope you have, you might recognize the figure at the bottom right here, which I've highlighted orange, is what we would recognize, or we teach at least, as a normal dochmiac. That goes short, long, long, short, long. Now, my colleague and mentor Armand Dangour, he devised the mnemonic. The wise kangaroos prefer boots to shoes. I'm going to say that again so you get the sense of rhythm. The wise kangaroos prefer boots to shoes. So that tells you how that rhythm can be realized and how it repeats. Gives a sense of its energy, and of course, I guess with kangaroos in the picture, of its bounce. But there are 5 other distinct patterns, or metra, as I'll call them, plural of metron, which are all different. They are nonetheless, confusingly, meter isn't fun, also called dochmiacs. There are 32 possible variations of the dochmiac, which you'll be really pleased to hear I don't have time to go into now. But you can see that some of them are identical. So these 6 which I've highlighted echo the rhythm of what is the refrain in this song, Katalo puro mai, Katalo puro mai, so with 3 little shorts at the beginning. That is the predominant rhythm in this song, and when you repeat it over and over, you start to feel the agitation. It is it grows, the agitation of the chorus in that rhythm. Another way of looking at those rhythms that we've already identified is to use substitution. Now, this might not translate brilliantly for those of you who are not based in the United Kingdom. So here's what you need to know. A custard cream, that's right, a custard cream is a fairly unpleasant sort of biscuit that British people like to dip in their tea. And I use these words, custard cream, for the teaching of what I would call a cretic, that's long, short, long, of dochmiacs. Custard creams look like this. There we go. They're quite small. Anyway, custard cream, that's what you need to know about the rhythm. And they appear, or at least the rhythm does, to some extent in many of the dochmiac variations that appear in this song. So the basic dochmiac in orange, you would say, I love custard creams. It's a really good way of remembering it. I love custard creams. The Catalapurumai dochmiac, the second one, the blue one that we said, delicious custard creams. Again, so we've all got variations on this particular biscuit going on here. And the other 4 dochmiacs that appear in this strophe, they all have technical terms, which I'll spare you, but in terms of biscuits, you can see there are 2 that introduce little variations. So beautiful custard creams, that's the green one up here on the right. I love custardy creams, again, is the light blue variation. And there are some that have these longer endings, creams, creams, creams. I love creams, creams, creams. Or down here at the left, delicious creams, creams, creams. Now, I've gone on about biscuits too much, but to tell you why I'm doing this, this is a song constructed around the dochmiac, but crucially constructed around 6 interestingly mixed up variations of the same exciting rhythmical building block. And when they're put together, they make one quite compelling verse, which has a rhythm which wasn't enormously evident in the last recording that we heard because of the pace of it. So here's how they fit together in the song. Love a bit of color coding. So using that color coding and again, biscuit-based substitution on the right, at this point, if you're still with me, well done. So we can perform at least the rhythm of that song as it was played on the ancient stage. So I'm going to read it to you now. What I urge you to do is to mute yourself and join in. And you can get a feel for what this rhythm is like, what it demands of you in terms of breath, what it does to your body, and so what it might be like to sing it, and of course to dance it. So I'm going to do the biscuit version first, and then I'll go back and do it in the Greek, but feel free to chant along with me. Okay, do mute. If you get it wrong, no one will ever know. So firstly, the biscuits, it goes like this. Delicious custard creams, delicious custard creams, beautiful custard creams, delicious creams, 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 delicious custard creams, delicious custard creams, delicious custard creams, delicious custard creams. I love creams, 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 delicious creams, creams, creams. I love creams, creams, creams. I love custardy creams. I love custard creams. So there we go. You can see that the rhythm takes you on a bit of a journey. The variations are really key to the implication of sort of turbulence, and we land on what we might recognize as the most commonly occurring of those rhythms, the really bona fide earworm. I'm going to do it again. I'll do it with the Greek and try and give you some essence of that, and feel free to sort of use the colors or the information on the right to join in. Good luck. Again, if you keep yourself muted, then no one will know you got it wrong. I'm really glad you're recording this. Thanks so much. So it goes like this on Catalo puro my materas haimosas hosana banhue homegos olbos umonimos en protois ana de laipos hostis acatutoas tinaxas daimon cateclusende non ponon hos pon tu labrois oletrioi sinen kumasin. I got some of that right, but I think the point is is a relatively good one, which is that there's a load of rhythmical energy in this song, and I hope that gives you a sense of the extent of rhythmic interest. What else do we learn apart from the fact that I have an unhealthy obsession with biscuits? Before we disappeared down this rabbit hole, I suggested that the rhythm might have something to tell us about tempo. To me, at least, this meter is effective in three regards. So it drives us forward. The three short syllables that recur at the beginning of 7 of these blocks are propulsive, and they suggest obviously a slightly brisker performance tempo to me. Secondly, the rhythm is restless. It's not stable. There are 6 subtly different variations in here that keep the performer and the audience on their toes. So it's not relaxing to sing or to hear, but it does effectively evoke the mood of the chorus and their shock at Orestes' action. And I guess finally, it's a great match, not necessarily for the mood, well, not only for the mood, but for the words. We have violent waves in here, oletrioisen and kumasin, and the chorus. So yeah, the violent waves that the chorus describe are evoked in the swaying back and forth of the meter. It's something that's happening to voices, to breath, to bodies in space. It doesn't have a predictable pulse, so it keeps everybody on their toes. I'm drawing to the end of my time now, but before wrapping up, I'm going to play you a short clip from another performance of this song. This time is mostly male voices and an aulos. Perhaps more authentic, although I think it still falls a very long way short of recreating the authentic feel of ancient Greek theatrical music, which I believe would be more impressive. So I'm going to click on the next slide and then try and tee it up at the right point, and you can hear a little bit, I hope, of what we've just been studying. So bear with. This is Barnaby Brown, who you may have encountered, who is one of the 2 outstanding proponents of the aulos in modernity, I think with a group of colleagues and collaborators in Italy. And here you'll hear a much rougher edge to the sound of both the vocal performance and of the aulos. So here it comes. Yeah, so I'm not sure you were expecting that, but there it is anyway. And I hope you recognised maybe a few of the words and a few of the rhythms that we'd been biscuiting. Obviously, fewer custard creams in that version, but the shapes of the dopniaks are clear to hear. As I hinted before, I think that performance, it makes some strides towards allowing us to hear some ancient Greek music, but it's also missing a lot of things, crucially scale, space, and indeed movement. This is music that was designed to fill enormous spaces, huge theatres for thousands of people, 15 voices, a screeching aulos, a very helpfully reflective acoustic, and a noisily appreciative audience would generate a vast noise compared to either of the recordings that you've heard. They've both been frankly intimate by comparison. There would be dancing, of course, so you have to factor in the noise of stomping feet, and maybe even, as we suggested in the Bacchae, the use of percussion or other props to generate more atmosphere, more noise. Which is to say, in a world full of music, the music of the ancient stage was amongst the noisiest. It was rich, it was complex, it was wildly popular. I hope that this brief introduction has whetted your appetite to find out more about it and maybe encouraged you, when you're thinking about the ancient world and in particular about its drama, to hear it, imaginatively at least, and to recognize music as such an essential component in ancient Greek life and culture. So thank you for listening. I'm bracing for your questions.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely illuminating. And I'm very happy that we recorded it. And I thank you for that, for anybody who's watching later. I'm going to stop it now so that we can just have a more intimate discussion. But I will say, if anybody wants to pose questions, I will do my best to pass them on.